From 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine, OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. And we roll on with Armando Salguero of OutKick.com, who joins us weekly at this time to talk the NFL headlines at OutKick.com. Armando, hope you're doing well.
Next week, when you guys are on the air in Nashville, are you going to ghost me? Or do I still rate in Nashville?
Oh, you rate huge in Nashville.
Yes, your Q rating, or what's it called?
It's the Q rating.
The Q rating is massive everywhere. Are you kidding me, Armando?
Your Q rating is as high as Will Smith before he slapped Chris Rock.
I have a question.
How high your
so
Q rating
last week you were at MetLife Stadium. Now,
and the week before you were at the Orange Bowl. So how have you selected these backgrounds?
Well, I want to tell you that my latent hobby is to go to NFL stadiums and take pictures from the press box. But these are the only three I have, so don't worry. This one is from a game in Arizona, I believe.
It looks great. All three of them would look fantastic.
Who's playing the halftime show or whatever this is?
Yeah, it was the Super Bowl, so somebody. I don't know. I don't remember.
Somebody great. Somebody great, no doubt. Armando.
No, it was a halftime Super Bowl show. It wasn't somebody great, except for last year. Last year was great.
So, Lamar Jackson is going to get paid, right? He's a starting quarterback. He's a former MVP. We know he's going to get paid a lot. The question is, on what tier do you expect this to end up? When we talk mega deals, and we know, based on what Deshaun Watson just got from Cleveland, Lamar being next up, and then there's others too, Burrow, Herbert is still to come. Where do you think Lamar ends up on that platform? Do you think, based on what happened in Cleveland, that he gets, if not the guaranteed, close to a guaranteed? Are we headed down that path?
So let's be honest with the people, right? We're speculating because
Sure, yes.
Lamar doesn't have an agent, and he's going to either represent himself, his family is going to represent himself with advisors, or he's going to go out and shop for an agent, which is, I don't buy that part. So we don't know where that person or where Lamar's head is at exactly on this topic. I know that Lamar is not hurting for money. He's going to be making $24 million this year. And he knows that next year, if he doesn't have a new contract, he is going to be, franchise tagged, which is another $27, $28 million guaranteed. Having said all that, having, set the field like that, Lamar Jackson is the Baltimore Ravens. He is every bit as much the Baltimore Ravens as what Patrick Mahomes is the Kansas City Chiefs, as Josh Allen is the Buffalo Bills. Last year, the Ravens, a team that was, hit by a bunch of injuries, were 7-4 with Lamar Jackson starting games and finishing them. And they were 1-5 in games he didn't start or finish. So what that tells you is that while Lamar Jackson was not in the lineup, he was seeming more valuable and making himself more money from the Baltimore Ravens. How that applies to Deshaun Watson's $230 million contract, Patrick Mahomes' $500 million contract over whatever number of years he signed it for, the $50 million a year by Aaron Rodgers, I can't tell you, but I can tell you it's going to be north of $40 million a year.
I'm intrigued from the business angle of this because, as you mentioned, he's representing himself. The owners are upset with Cleveland for that $250 million plus fully guaranteed deal for Deshaun Watson. The question I have about this and how it kind of shapes moving forward what we're going to see for Burrow and Herbert and everyone else, if in fact he gets the extension now, is how is this the next fully guaranteed contract because the precedent has been set? And if so, everybody's getting it at the quarterback position if you're at that next level that we're discussing now. And we would put Burrow and Herbert in that discussion. There will be others. But you get my point here. If Lamar Jackson gets the fully guaranteed deal that Deshaun Watson did, we're off to the races in terms of quarterback contracts in the NFL.
My guess is that Kyler Murray is the next quarterback to sign, a big contract. I'll be interested to see what he does and what he gets, because he does, in fact, have an agent, and an agent who's been very aggressive, and Kyler Murray has been very desirous of getting this deal done. And it will be done, I've been told, by the end of summer. So that, to me, is the next one. And if that one doesn't set itself up as fully guaranteed, then teams can kind of, pull back from that precipice. Meanwhile, players will continue to press for that that full, leap into the stratosphere of fully guaranteed.
I don't know if you're as down on the Taysom Hill concept as I am. Dennis Allen, I think, now has him as a tight end, but at the same time, he's saying he's going to be used in the same way. So they're not calling him a quarterback, but I guess they still intend on using him for those plays. At least they're removing the idea that he is in the pecking order at quarterback. What do you think of him and the way they used him and will use him?
Paul, what I think of Taysom Hill is, if we're discussing him during the NFL season more than we're discussing the Saints' one-time use of that black helmet that they rolled out today, I'm telling you that it's a bad season for the New Orleans Saints, because it means he's playing a lot. The New Orleans Saints need a starting quarterback who's a legit starting quarterback. I don't personally believe that Taysom Hill is that guy. I don't think you believe that he's that guy. I don't believe Jameis Winston is that guy. I don't think, but he's more that guy than Taysom Hill is. Would we all agree on that?
Yes.
I mean, Jameis, say what you will, he threw 30 interceptions one year with another team, but he's got legit quarterback talent, whereas Taysom Hill he's a gimmick, and you don't win with gimmicks in the NFL, especially when you feed it to the opponent, constantly.
Armando, you've said this, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that, coaching matters in the National Football League, and having a really good head coach is important for a franchise. I guess my question is this: is Sean Payton really that good, based on the rumors of money that's out there to get Sean Payton? If you're a team, is he that much better than most of the other coaches in the NFL?
So let me draw a scenario for you, Chad. Last year, at one point, the New Orleans Saints didn't have Alvin Kamara, obviously Drew Brees had retired. Taysom Hill was injured. Their next quarterback was injured. I think Ian Book played his first game. They didn't have their left tackle. They didn't have their starting wide receiver. And for an entire half, they gave the Miami Dolphins all that they could handle. I believe that at halftime, the game was like 3-0. So I don't know. They looked pretty good to me. They looked well coached to me. And if you don't have talent, if you don't have your starting quarterback or your second quarterback or your third quarterback, and your fourth quarterback is starting his first game ever, your starting running back is out, your left tackle is out, your right tackle is out, and you're giving a team that's got, borderline playoff hopes a run for their money, I don't think it's the depth. I think it's the coaching. And so anyone, I think that, measures the top 5, 8 coaches in the NFL and they don't include Sean Payton, that's questionable.
Hypothetical here, because we know Miami was after him, and a year from now, and maybe not even a year from now, he's coaching again. We know that a team will have to trade with New Orleans for the right to sign him. can they do that hypothetically in November and December if they fire their coach? If the league signs off on it, could they trade for Sean Payton before anyone else has an opportunity to make a move with their coach, knowing that he's going to get paid mega bucks in order to make this scenario happen, of course?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Rooney rule.
Again, I'm sorry?
Rooney rule.
Well, there is that. And so, but you know what?
But you're trading here. You're not hiring. Yeah. You're trading for the rights.
Right. You can trade for his rights and whatever, and not say that he's going to be your head coach. You could trade for him and he could be your general manager / head coach. I don't know. The point being, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
Because, look, Steve Ross has bigger problems right now than doing a wackadoodle mid-season trade for Sean Payton. Steve Ross is under investigation by the NFL. And he's under investigation for trying, allegedly, to lose on purpose to the point where he offered Brian Flores, his previous head coach, $100,000 a year to lose in 2019, to lose games. So I'm not, if they didn't go forward with the idea of trying to get Sean Payton and Tom Brady after that lawsuit by Brian Flores dropped, I don't believe that they're going to be making any moves until that plays itself out.
John McClain surprised me when he upped his prediction of a Deshaun Watson suspension to a full season. What's your inclination on what it'll be? What's your inclination on when it'll come down?
So there's supposed to be 2 more suits filed this week. They haven't been yet, but, we're on the clock. And so that would be 26 instead of 24. And if I'm the NFL and I see these lawsuits adding up, to me, that says you can't come out with a sanction until you know the entire scope of the new allegations and you investigate those. I mean, that's just logic to me, because if the NFL comes out and announces these sanctions, they didn't obviously look at the lawsuits from last week. If there's 2 more this week, they will not have looked at those. And who knows that there might not be 2 more the next week and the week after that. So I think the NFL is slowing its roll right now on the sanctions. And yeah, it's not looking great for Deshaun Watson, but the previous history of all of this is not an entire year right off the bat. So that's, it's just not.
Armando, what if it's just more of the same? We keep getting reports and, it's nothing. I guess my point is, and I'm not trying to downplay it, it's nothing new, right? Every time something comes out, it's more of the same with Deshaun Watson. So, I fully expect there's going to be more women that come forward at some point, but it's all the same type of allegation. So if you're the NFL, could you act on that, what you've seen now, knowing, there's a strong likelihood more women will come forward, but everything that's happening now is all the same?
Well, it's nothing new,
yes.
Fair, but it's something more. And that's problematic, because just because it's new doesn't mean it's the same, even though the allegations are the same. Suppose, for example, the NFL has decided that the 22 initial cases that they looked at, the 22 ones that happened during their investigation were frivolous. And this is a hypothetical, were frivolous. That doesn't mean that the 2 that have been filed since then are frivolous. And it surely doesn't mean that 2 more that have been threatened to be filed this week are frivolous. So to assume that if those are bad, these are going to be bad. I don't see how the NFL can stand on that platform. It's just, and imagine if we find out that the latest ones are the most onerous ones and the most provable ones. Where does that leave the NFL?
Armando Salguero with us. Let's go round table here, and everyone can chime in, but Armando, start with you. Just tell me if yes or no and why you think this happens or doesn't happen, based on headlines out there right now. Will the Panthers trade for a veteran quarterback by week 1?
Yes.
And at Mayfield, I'm guessing that's who you would go with?
Who else is there?
Garoppolo.
Yes. Well, yes, Mayfield.
Guys, you think the Panthers are in?
I agree.
I think Mayfield, and I think Cleveland will pick up
now. Yeah, I don't think Cleveland's going to have to pay
a lot.
But they're going to do it.
Man, it's taken quite some time, hasn't it?
I'm still surprised.
I agree with you guys.
Well, I mean, if you haven't done it by minicamp, it doesn't matter what you do over the next 6 weeks if you do it before the 26th of July.
I just, if we agree that Cleveland's picking up a big chunk of this, I don't know why you didn't do it during the draft and just be done with it and get some picks you can use now.
Well, they didn't do it during the draft because Cleveland was asking more.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But if we agree that Cleveland's going to pick up a big chunk of the deal, which is what the Panthers were waiting on, I don't know why Cleveland all of a sudden would want to pick up the salary now compared to at the draft when you could get something for it, for that money that you're paying him to not play for you.
The Cleveland Browns don't want to open training camp and have Baker Mayfield on their roster and have Baker Mayfield possibly showing up. That would be disastrous.
Speaking of camp, Kingsbury says that he's praying that the Kyler Murray contract gets done before training camp. Does it get done by the end of July?
Yes.
Guys?
No. But it's also clear that Kyler Murray feels like it's getting done before training camp.
No.
But given the Cardinals' history, they're not going to get it done.
Not getting done. And he doesn't deserve for it to get done.
You know what's interesting there is the Cardinals have a reputation as starting fast and finishing in a disastrous collapse. If they don't get this thing done, they're not starting fast.
And DeAndre Hopkins isn't there either.
If they've got beef with their quarterback who expects a contract and it's not done, how are they starting fast? And like Paul said, his number one receiver is not there.
Yeah, if it doesn't get done, Armando, Kingsbury's offseason starts fast. By November, he's out of there. Jeffrey Simmons is having a sit-in, or at least that's how we've termed it here on the show yesterday, where he showed up, but he's not participating in minicamp. And but we discussed this briefly last week, I believe, where Aaron Donald gets paid, and Simmons is not going to get Donald money, but he's next at the position. He's just finished year 3. 2.2, Paul, right? Is the is the guarantee. Is now the time to extend him? And by showing up and doing it this way, is Jeffrey Simmons, in your mind, ready for the extension now, Armando, compared to a year from now when we would have penciled everything in for this?
Right. So it always goes back to the quarterback, right? I believe the Tennessee Titans have the largest cap hit of any quarterback in the NFL on Ryan Tannehill. And if they had a middling cap hit, a reasonable cap hit, they probably could get this done for a player who, by all accounts, is better at what he does than what Ryan Tannehill does. And that's how it should be. It should be fair. He should be paid. Does that mean he's going to be paid? No, because the reality is they still have Ryan Tannehill with the biggest cap hit in the entire NFL. And so how do you fix that? That's going to be the problem. And I guess they can figure it out. You can always figure out the cap, but it's not going to be $25 million, guys. It's not going to be that.
They still have room, and they could do it. But there's also a question about extending guys 2 years out. If they extend him 2 years out and they dumped A.J. Brown after 3 years, they're setting a precedent. If you're a good player here after 3 years, something's happening. And I think that's a little bit dangerous, as good as both those players have been.
I see the logic behind it, Hutton. I'm waiting until next season to start this clock.
And next season he's getting big
but
money.
also in big part because of what Armando's saying. I want to see what Ryan Tannehill does this year. I want to see what we think about the Titans' future after this year, not just at quarterback, but as a team, and how long they're going to contend.
But Simmons is a piece
before
no
making
matter
decisions
what.
like that.
Simmons is a piece, whether they're a Super Bowl contender or whether they're rebuilding.
But if Tannehill's not a part of it after this year, for sure. I mean, Tannehill goes out and lights it on fire this year.
But either way, he's getting a new contract where you can push the
you can front load it or back load it.
He's
you can
not
front load it or
counting
back load it depending on
whatever he counts next year. It's not going to be that way. Even if he goes and wins the Super Bowl this year, they're going to they would extend him and take less of a hit now and give him more upfront money on the new extension.
I want to know more about my team next year.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the Titans going out and winning the Super Bowl this year.
Well, going back to Simmons briefly, the way it transpired this week was interesting. He's there. He's standing outside briefly on day number 1.
Biked a little.
He's not practicing. They said it was not injury related. They refused to talk that it was contract related. Although he did his best not to directly lie to the media in his presser and media availability. And to his credit, he spoke to the media. It was just if you're not extending him now, it was a weird way to go about this week to me.
He was trying to be stand up, but wasn't saying anything either, and nor was the team. It's very awkward.
It's not, it's not without precedence. There have been players that show up to both minicamp and training camp,
right, and
suddenly have a tweak of a hamstring, suddenly can't practice for days. Let me think. Xavier Howard early last year, did not practice the first week of training camp because he wanted a new contract. And guess what? He got it.
He did, but he was 2 years removed from getting the previous extension, though, right? So
right,
like
worse.
Even worse, yeah. But way different here, where coming off year 3, he's making, he's on his rookie deal and he's trying to get that first extension. Like I don't know. The way the team handled it, Paul, and the way Simmons responded, it sounds like he told the media, Armando, I'll see you in July at camp. He didn't say, I'll see you, you'll be watching me practice, to your point.
Could be more of the same.
Yeah. So who knows where we're headed with it. It's just an intriguing scenario because Aaron Donald got the mega $30 million, and now if I'm Simmons, I try to repeat what I just did because you mentioned he's not getting $25 million. He will if he repeats the numbers he had last year. He'll get up to $23 to $25 million on average a year on this new deal.
If you asked, it would be interesting to ask Simmons, would you prefer to, bet on yourself and have another year like you just did and go for that, Aaron Donald money? Or would you rather have the lesser money now? And my guess is most players say now.
And that's why if you're the team, it's going to cost you more if you wait. If you believe in your player, so that's why you do it now, because you feel like you could get a bargain. What you don't want is Xavier Howard to happen 2 years from now, where you extend him now after year 3, and then he comes back and says, "Well, I've outplayed the extension."
I'm even better.
Yeah. So it's an interesting scenario to watch play out over the next month and a half. Armando, always great. We appreciate you, and maybe I don't know, have one of your. I know this is your camera that you have the backdrop with, but maybe have someone else send you a stadium and mix it up a little bit.
I've got a great Nissan Stadium you can use on other shows. I'll send you.
Email me Nissan Stadium, Paul. I would love it.
New stadium every week. I love it. Taking suggestions. Thanks, Armando.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, man.
There's Armando Salguero. We know of Jerry's World, speaking of stadiums, Paul. Jerry Jones spoke about the mayor.
What took him so long?
I don't know. Maybe he was finally available. It comments on the second NFL team and the mayor saying that Dallas could use one. Well, there was a little mic drop moment from Jerry, and he's absolutely right. We'll tell you why next on Outkick 360. Jerry Jones was recently asked about the mayor of Dallas's comments from, Paul said it during the break, he thought it was maybe 6 weeks ago, and I think he's right, about how Dallas could host another NFL franchise. And Jerry, to his credit, and I think it's smart to say, he's like, hey, the mayor knows quite a bit, but in regards to what the Cowboys mean to the NFL brand, it would be extremely foolish to put another NFL team in Dallas, considering the fan base and the following that we have, not just in Texas, but beyond. It's difficult to, right now they have 2 pro franchises in Texas. It's difficult to put a third in there in the state, let alone a second in Dallas. We had the discussion on OutKick 360, last month for sure. But he's absolutely right. And it was a peculiar comment to begin with.
The start to his quote was just terrific when Jerry Jones starts with, well, I like the mayor. I like the mayor. I like him personally, but he doesn't have the depth. He doesn't have the knowledge that others have regarding how unique Dallas is and how we enjoy the interest in the Cowboys. He is speaking to the mayor like he's a child, which to Jerry Jones, this mayor is a child. Let's face it. It's great. But I like the mayor because I can see and hear. I'm just reading the quote.
It's a good thing
I can see and hear Jerry Jones saying that. Right?
Yeah, if he didn't like the mayor, he really would have.
He turned the entire fan base against him.
Tone would have been, he could get him unelected.
Yeah. Get him out of here. He's not a Cowboys
Never mind
fan.
Losing the next election, get him impeached.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes on to, it wouldn't want to water down that as it relates to Dallas. If he knew as much or had spent as much time in sports as I have, he would know these things. It's great.
Look, I mean, the NFL can go some places. Back to Dallas is not one of them.
Coming up, the World Cup sites are going to be announced. The World Cup for 2026 here in the United States. We'll tell you the 10 venues and those on the outside looking in after a 4-year bidding process, who was selected. We'll also tell you the U.S. Open leaderboard and who's at the top and the bottom. That's next on OutKick 360. Final hour, OutKick 360 on this Thursday edition. 6th and Peabody, our location. Each and every day you can come visit the next time you're in Music City. Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine, live music, live studio, and much more. And Paul, it's 6th and Peabody's located where?
Peabody and 6th.
Right downtown. Real simple to follow.
It's in the title of the venue.
Big thanks to the entire OutKick crew for making the show happen today and always, and for you viewing or listening across the OutKick network. Chad, U.S. Open leaderboard, if you don't mind, which includes some big stars at the top, and it takes a while to find others as you continue to scroll through those who are on the course right now.
Yeah, Rory McIlroy and a bunch of dudes at 3 under par. That's the way I would describe it. A bunch of guys you probably don't really care about. One from Sweden, one from Canada, a couple from England that you don't really care about at 3 under. 2 under par right now. Matthew Neesmith, Brian Harmon, the Americans, Hayden Buckley, an American. Justin Rose also at 2 under. Colin Morikawa done for the day, 1 under par. John Rahm, the defending champion, also at 1 under par. Justin Thomas, he is on hole number 13, the 13th hole of this round. I don't know that it's exactly hole number 13, but the 13th hole of his round, he's at 1 under. So only 2 off the lead. Dustin Johnson, also at 1 under par now. He just birdied. So he joins Justin Thomas at 1 under. He is through 10. Shane Lowry at 1 under par through 10 as well. Hideki Matsuyama, Xander Schauffele at even par. Tony Finau through 12 at even par. I don't know how I didn't know this, but there's an Irish guy named Seamus Power who is at even par right now. Wow. He may be my new favorite golfer just by that name. Seamus Power through 11 at even par. And Phil Mickelson, once again, we got to go far. By the way, Bryson DeChambeau's recovered a bit. He was at 4 over at one point. He's 1 over right now through 9 holes. Jordan Spieth done for the day at +2. Phil Mickelson has not had a good day, and I'm scrolling.
He was 5 over earlier. That was an hour ago. That's a long time in Phil time. Only 1 bogey since then. Okay.
+6 through 10 holes is Phil Mickelson. Prediction, he will not be making the cut, which most predicted he would not make the cut.
Paul, do we have an update on the World Cup venues yet?
No, I'm on the FIFA feed, and it looks like it starts at quarter after, if I'm reading it correctly. So,
but the release yesterday said 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, in that, I asked because I've got a story here. I'm going to read from Sports Illustrated on my app. And it's going to cite Pro Football Talk for this, but it's in regards to Deshaun Watson and the NFLPA. So
I've got an eye on this.
Okay. And again, I'm just going to read straight through it because it's just been posted here. A decision on the NFL's investigation into Deshaun Watson has not been announced yet, but according to Pro Football Talk, the NFL Players Association is preparing for a, quote, unprecedented, unquote, punishment recommendation. Watson could face a fine, suspension, or nothing at all. But if an unpaid suspension is enacted under the personal conduct policy, Florio and Pro Football Talk, they're reporting that the NFLPA will mobilize with an aggressive defense on Watson's behalf. And they're going to point to 3 prominent owners and get them involved with how the NFL has handled ownership issues in recent years. Specifically Daniel Snyder, Robert Kraft, and Jerry Jones. So the NFLPA is going to use whatever suspension is headed Watson's way, and more specifically the fine, to point to what could be an argument for Goodell's power and league power over players.
I think that's a pretty weak case. I mean, I think you could bring Daniel Snyder against him for fostering a culture of sexual harassment and creating a place where women are uncomfortable. You could certainly use that against him. Robert Kraft, as far as we know, did one stupid thing and paid whatever penalty came with that, went through the court system.
There was no penalty. They didn't punish him as a league.
Okay. No, but I mean, the legal penalty. He went through the legal system. I don't know if he got probation or whatever.
Yeah,
but
you're
he went
right.
Through the legal
it was
system.
settled.
So he settled
It was
his
settled,
one case.
and the video will never see the light of day if there is one.
Right. But he settled his one case. And Jerry Jones's thing, while it didn't get a lot of steam, is also what was it? He had a child out of wedlock.
Let me stop with just real brief, just because I'm thinking of what I would say if they said, well, Kraft settled his one case. Watson has settled 0 cases, and there are no criminal charges, and nothing's going to be settled by the time punishment comes down.
Okay.
So, and he's claiming complete innocence with
Well, that's fine. No, I would say you're comparing apples to. We'll go back and forth. I'm the league,
But this is
and
just
you're,
player
you're
and
Watson.
owner, no doubt.
I'm the league, and you're Watson. Yeah, one thing, and you've got 26 things that are still up in the air. And continue to come
settled.
out of the woodwork.
There's one more settled with Robert Kraft than there is Deshaun Watson.
Correct. Jerry Jones, let's go. What's his accusation? He had a
secret child.
They did not
Secret child
investigate.
is not,
no,
I mean,
no,
there's
no,
not
no.
even a charge.
It's not that. It's not that. It's they're going to point to the voyeurism camera locker room thing
Rich
with the
Dowell.
cheerleaders,
Yeah.
and that the NFL never even looked into it.
That's right.
I mean, sure. We never looked.
At least that would be my assumption. Is what the case they're talking about.
I mean, look, the Players Association is correct. It's not fair. But they're owners. You're a player.
Right.
I mean, I don't.
Well, and
Isn't
Goodell
the
has
response
this authority.
If I'm Roger Goodell, if I just had True Serum, I'd say, well, yeah, I work for them.
Yeah.
You work for me.
Jerry Jones doesn't have a contract to own the Cowboys, but Deshaun Watson has a contract to play for the Browns.
They're right. It's not fair. They're not going to treat owners and players the same way. But that's life. I mean,
the boss
people
doesn't
of
get treated
higher
the same as the
status
employee.
Get treated differently than those that are employees. This is the way it works. Unfortunately, I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying justice is being meted out in all these cases, but duh. Of course the owners are treated differently.
And I'm accurate in stating here the fine is the maximum fine can be if he's suspended without pay, it's for the length of the suspension for whatever is the base salary on his contract, correct?
Yeah.
So unless it's multiple years,
it's not hurting him financially.
Right.
Look,
so
and the league has always
but,
considered it takes 2 things away from you: game pay and games. The 2 things that players want most.
But and again, this is coming through Florio, and I have not read Florio's full opinion/report on this, and I will do that before we wrap up the show just to clarify this. But the key word that everyone's picking up on is the NFLPA is preparing for the quote unprecedented penalty. I always use this as the example for what we went and covered here in town in, 2006, 2007 with Adam Pac-Man Jones. Was he not suspended without pay, or am I wrong in thinking that?
I think he was suspended without pay for a full season.
And that would have been a rookie deal that was fully guaranteed at that time based on the way the CBA was written. He was the 6th overall selection.
And that season was told. So it basically just he lost the season. It picked up the next year.
How is this? I'm trying to figure out how it could be unprecedented.
It would have to be. Well, it's unprecedented. It's a veteran, not a rookie. But you could say that. But
in terms
more
of
than
suspension length and pay,
has anyone been suspended for an entire season without any criminal conviction?
That would make it unprecedented. That's good thinking.
Well,
Chad.
Pac-Man was never convicted criminally on this case.
Here's what's strange to me about all this. Everyone is comparing the NFL's response that we haven't seen yet, or their reaction to what just happened to Trevor Bauer in Major League Baseball. And it's, the NFL can't look bad, like they're soft on this stuff. But when the MLB just did that to Trevor Bauer, and I'm thinking to myself, first off, how is Trevor Bauer suspended for 2 years? I have no idea. I don't know what Major League Baseball knows. But how do we compare the two?
But we can't. What bugs me about this whole recency reporting, as I'll refer to it as, is there are a lot of people that are reporting as if all this happened within the last 2 months after this guy just got traded and was handed this fully guaranteed contract. That's what's unprecedented about the story. So we can compare the situations for the league to league and how they've handled the situations, but it's not like we can compare it to whatever the league does now because of what they've allowed to happen over the last 11 months. That's I feel like the vast majority of those covering the story are overlooking that fact. Watson really doesn't get penalized in this. It's the Browns chose to do it, but there were multiple teams willing to at least trade for the guy. Well, maybe not give the fully guaranteed money. And the league, as late or as recent, I should say, as late as last October at the trade deadline, he would have been traded to Miami. They settled they've received 4 signatures. They were lacking 4 signatures on the settlement.
Missing 2 seasons of your prime is punishment, though. I understand the finances are a big thing, but missing time is big for guys.
But that's not the league doing that. I mean, I see what Hutton is saying here. I also think the league just has an easy out to say, we were quiet on it because we were compiling our information before we made a decision. And then they're going to fall back on, we didn't tell the Browns to do this or any other team. So they did it, and it's on them now for doing it. I don't buy it, but I think they have a pretty easy out to say, we didn't have our investigation complete, so we didn't act.
Biggest suspensions of the modern NFL, Michael Vick, indefinite ban. He was July of 2007, reinstated July of 2009, so it amounted to 2 years.
Banned, but not like under contract. The Falcons, he was headed to prison, and they removed him from their salary
Plaxico
payroll.
Burress was suspended for 2 years when he shot himself in the leg. September 2009. Missed 2009 and 2010, returned to play for the Jets and the Steelers. I'm not remembering what his contract situation was either. Dante Stallworth, all of 2009, after the vehicular manslaughter, and Adam Jones, all of 2007. I think that's the closest because he was under contract.
Yeah. But the unprecedented nature of this, it's confusing.
Settlement.
It's just confusing that it's now all of a sudden they're preparing for the unprecedented nature of a suspension and fine, but yet 6 months ago, here's the sign on the dotted line. You're traded. He's going to be able to he's been available to the media twice since then. Whereas 6 months ago, he was nowhere to be found. They didn't want him speaking. He made $10 million plus last year to not play. I mean, the only punishment will be he's not able to play, and in fact, he's being paid handsomely if in fact the suspension is only games, because it's tough to fine him based on the rules.
Yeah, and we should point out, as we do virtually every time that the NFLPA comes up, it's the weakest union in all of sports, and I can't think of a case off the top of my head, though there probably is one where they've been effective at something like this. They negotiate weak CBAs that allow for situations like this where the power...
Yeah, they negotiate the suspension down on the appeal, but it's not like it's...
Yeah, that's kind of formulaic most of the time.
I agree. The unprecedented report, the word is interesting because...
that's the most interesting
thing. The unprecedented to me is this is... they would act on something to some large extent based on accusations and no criminal finding. And that would be unprecedented to give someone some huge fine or suspend them for a year.
And there would be no
or it's more than a year.
If the league was consistent in this case, he wouldn't miss a single down. Quite frankly, until he's convicted of something, they just come back and say, well, it's all allegations. He denies it. They're saying it's true, and 2 grand juries threw it out. So our hands are tied.
Well, we're
not doing anything until something happens.
That plus the lack of a settlement. Plus the lack of a settlement, because they've suspended guys who've settled.
If they go on their whole thing so far, their stance of silence and doing nothing, then they would continue to do nothing until he, as you said, settles or is convicted of something.
Which I agree with what you're saying, but it puts him in a very awkward position to have him be a featured player in the league with this looming over his head and potentially new lawsuits continuing to trickle out.
I also think that it puts
How fun would that be for the league to have, hey, here's lawsuit 27 and 28. Let's see what he says after they play the Cowboys this week.
Paul, you don't think it puts them in an awkward position if they do nothing for this long and then all of a sudden decide you're done for a year? That's going to put him in an awkward
Oh, yeah,
spot,
they're
too.
in an awkward spot no matter what.
Right? I mean, that's going to appease the masses, I think, if they did that. But based on what they've done, it would be completely inconsistent. And I believe he's getting some sort of suspension. I'm just saying that based on what they've done so far, there's nothing new in this case that would lead them to doing something or announcing something.
And I absolutely believe he's done something suspension worthy, though I'm confused by the grand jury stuff, obviously.
The other important thing to note is this is not the Goodell NFL investigation. It's independent, and based on that, the whole public trial, the public trial by opinion, it's not supposed to factor into what she comes back with on the recommendation for the suspension or penalty, if there even is one. And I throw that in there because that's also an option. Although I agree with you guys, there's going to be something. The question I would also ask is, whenever they get this recommendation from their independent investigator, does Goodell look at it and think, okay, we're just going to go by the recommendation and this is going to be the suspension? He can lessen. He can go less than the recommendation. He can go more. But if you're going above and beyond that, the questions remain, why not, if you're going to suspend him more than the recommendation from the independent investigation anyway, what took you so long?
Yeah.
That's my question to it.
I can't imagine they go more than the recommendation.
Well, I mean, based on, I'm saying based on how many people think we're getting a harsher suspension than what was perceived to be like a 6-week type deal because of the news and the continued allegations and the fact that the public
badly for him.
Wants this, so the league will react to this in comparison to what Major League Baseball did. So if you buy that, then what are we really waiting on here? If that's what Goodell and the NFL are going to do, I think they're going to just go based on whatever the independent investigator says she recommends, and that's what they're going with, and then they'll go into the quick appeal.
Well, they'll take their temperature. They'll take public opinion temperature after she'll announce her thing. They'll announce it, and then between that and Goodell confirming or adjusting, they'll certainly monitor the temperature of the football watching public to see if people think it's right or not.
But if that was true, where were they last September?
Yeah, I just don't think the football watching public is going to care enough.
I think the football watching public will have a big reaction one way or the other.
In the court of public opinion, last year, whenever all of this came out, if they're going to react to what the public and what the media was wanting, this guy would have been placed on some type of list a year ago, and he wasn't.
Well, the thing that saved them from the demand for the list is the pay element, right?
Well, they could have. No, I think
he got paid.
He would have been paid on the commissioner's list,
right? So it was the same difference, suspended or not suspended, because he was making the money.
Yeah, but the difference is, but the debate was, well, if he's eligible, if he's on a Houston roster, and they can't put him on IR. They couldn't cut him because of the salary cap hit, and the commissioner refused to place him on his list with pay. So the Texans were left having him as a member of their 53-man squad. And so that was the debate then, is if you're not going to act on this, can he be traded and can he play? And we didn't really know what the league was going to do, right? So that's what's so confusing with it, is and I'm not against an about face if you know it's wrong. I just don't know where they were a year ago with
this. The other thing, too, I mean, we've said this time and time again. For all of this time, surely in all of this time, even though the initial decision comes from somewhere else. Right. You had to have had a whiteboard, a spreadsheet that said, if this, then this. This, then this. If this, then this. And played out every conceivable scenario. No? Because I don't feel like they did that, Hud. I feel like what they did is said, we don't have to deal with this. We're lucky. We can wait.
Well, what they pointed to publicly was they didn't have the information because the police investigation and the cooperation was not up to their liking to make a determination.
There was no cooperation to give them the
But
information.
at the time-
if this, then this. If.
But at the time,
We
I
know
said,
all the potential
where
scenarios.
has that ever stopped the National Football League before?
Yeah, hasn't.
And where has that ever stopped reporting before? Like, it took a while for details to get out. And then we finally had the depositions released. And then even then, we're just now cycling back through the same details from that. The whole thing is wild. And now you've got Florio saying unprecedented suspension that the NFLPA is preparing for in defense of Watson's suspension. Craziness. But I do think once the suspension is announced, there will be an appeal. That will move fast. Like that, we will know something on Cleveland's behalf on who's available and who's not and when before the season gets here. If everything is announced prior to the start of the season. And we all expect it to be during the news dump of July 4th, don't we? That weekend?
Yeah, if not that,
Because
then
they-
right before opening day. Right before opening day of camp.
They said they've concluded their investigation, right? Or at least the NFL's portion
Well,
of
they
it.
concluded it, and then they went back into it after the new lawsuits. And then have they concluded that portion of it?
There's,
Well,
there's
they said they're
one
done
more
talking with him.
deadline coming up legally, like the end of evidence or something. I wish I could remember what it was. There's one more key law date that could wait.
Yeah, but
that's before training camp.
But that's not what the independent investigator and like all of that was. It was reported that they're wrapping that part up.
Yeah.
So based on the time frame for what the league is wanting, they'll have their report done before we even get close to this going to a civil case, which we expect it to be now 2023. Because that was the report back in February. If it got to a certain date in July, then we for sure, that was from the women's attorney, Busby, that the timetable would push it back past the season again. Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360.
There is still no announcement on World Cup.
No,
news.
I'm watching it. They just, it's a show. So they've
Okay.
just showed
It's on-
all
it's
of
on
the, all of
FS1.
the
We're going to
it's like
pass
a
it
selection
along.
show.
We'll pass it along, and there will be some big sites across the Southeast. Atlanta's a given, right? It's just a no-brainer.
The stadium and
The stadium itself and the location, and it's just it's a no-brainer. Will Nashville be on this list? Because Nashville, since when? We'll discuss this when we come back. Since when has it been that Nashville was told no? And could this be the first time in a while? Also, we say the Watson case keeps getting pushed back. When is the last time we discussed what's going on in Russia with Brittney Griner? Because she remains detained. And they have pushed back the pretrial hearing for her detention. What's taking so long with this from our perspective sitting here? We've got that and more straight ahead on OutKick 360. Got a U.S. Open leaderboard for you momentarily. OutKick 360 rolls on from 6th and Peabody and across the OutKick network. We have a few of the 2026 World Cup sites in North America announced, Paul.
The West, Vancouver, Seattle, San Francisco Bay Area, L.A., and Guadalajara.
Making our way to the Midwest and then East.
From a Nashville perspective, I saw a couple different people tweeting out Denver being out is probably a good sign for Nashville. If you're looking for clues, that could be a good one for Nashville.
I think you need several more clues also. Unfortunately.
This has been a 4-year bidding process, and a year and a half ago, it would have been assumed that Nashville was getting one of these. Like if you just poll the room, and then I was a bit surprised to learn, Paul, whenever you said it doesn't sound like they're getting it. I was like, really? Because I can't remember the last time Nashville wasn't selected for one of these events.
Well, my hope is that
this will be the biggest.
These people who are predicting are asleep on Nashville. You know, the stadium uncertainty could be a factor. But what FIFA has really emphasized, and U.S. Soccer, is that they're looking for an experience well beyond the stadium. And a lot of these places we're talking about, stadiums are, in the middle of nowhere. Nashville is one of the best on this list in terms of everything being together, and we know that's why Nashville is such a great tourist city and such a great event city. Is that you walk across the bridge to the stadium, whether there's construction going on there or not. Hotels here, bars here. Hell, we're sitting in one of them. Restaurants, all of that. Very compact and a great footprint for a big event, and that's what we do very, very well. Is that enough to sway them? I mean, I in the article I was talking about yesterday, they've agreed to let them knock out the corners of Nissan Stadium in order to make it a little bit bigger of a field. There's not a lot of corner kick space there. I think you could widen the field a little bit if you do that, and those are some of the things Nashville's agreed to do. So better and better and better. Not the best stadium by any means, but FIFA would have, conceivably 6 months to do whatever it wanted to that building. And ideally, Titans would be moving into the new one right next door immediately after that, or playing their last season in it, where they wouldn't care that much what FIFA had done to it because they'd be on their way out.
Is there any chance that FIFA wanted the new stadium?
Well, I'm sure FIFA would love the new stadium. I just don't know if it's feasible.
Well,
and even if that was ready for them. Like, would you want the first thing in the new stadium to be the biggest event in the world without any test run stuff?
Well,
it's a little bit dangerous.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't
care. They told them they could have them.
But if you got an event like that, I mean, that's something you're willing to put up with.
They've told them they can have it. If it's ready, they can have it.
But here's the biggest issue with the deterrent on why it, to me, logistically, it's got to be Nissan Stadium and not the new stadium, even based on the timetable. So that if everything goes to plan,
Kansas City just got, which is not a great sign. But Kansas City really is unique in the Midwest because Chicago was out from the beginning and they need a Midwestern city. Kansas City, Dallas, both in.
Well, why was Chicago out early?
I don't know. And that's the home of U.S. soccer. But for some reason, Soldier Field didn't get it together.
How much of it, let me back up.
Which we presume.
How much of this is just about the money when it comes to FIFA?
I think decent, but I mean who's not offering the money? Any
Chicago.
Of these cities.
I don't know.
Yeah, but Chicago immediately, was very quickly out.
But a 4-year.
FIFA's about money? Who knew?
Well, that was like, if you want the experience and you want, like, a 4-year bidding process doesn't take that long to show what you can do with this. Like
Kansas City, Dallas, Atlanta, Houston, Montreal just got the middle 5.
And again, we're seeing the World Cup sites for 2026 in the United States.
Could Nashville be East?
And North America.
Could be, but...
Philly's going to be one, right?
Philly, Baltimore, Washington,
you
New
said
York.
Montreal, Paul.
New York,
Monterey.
definitely. Monterey?
Yes.
Yeah, Montreal did not get it.
Oh,
or at least
Kansas
not
City,
yet.
Dallas, Atlanta, Houston, Monterey, Mexico City.
So here's the logistical issue with the stadium, and it's not anyone's fault here. FIFA wants complete control of the stadium. Like when I say complete control, employees of the Tennessee Titans, of the ticket office, all of those guys are completely moved out of the stadium for how long? It's like a 6-month stretch,
a long
right?
stretch. But the Titans are moving largely out of that because they have their new building now over at headquarters.
There are a lot of logistical things, though, that go on to prepare for a game where you need access to your stadium. And if you're opening up a new stadium and FIFA wants to use the new building, the dome, you can stay you can stay at Nissan, but I'm saying like you can't just give them the brand new stadium where in the contract they're going to have complete control. It's not like they share space with you. They own the building until they leave, like based on the contract there. So it doesn't make sense if you're trying to play in 2026 in the new state-of-the-art facility that they're building across the river next door to the old one, that you would just hand the keys over and then move in 2 weeks before the regular season starts. Like you can't do that. But at the same time, you also logistically you need some access to the old stadium if something like, God forbid, a tornado hits downtown and it backs up construction on the new building. Where are you playing and how are you having access to the old building if you know what hits the fan? Now,
I think
you can say
contingencies
that about
would be
any
built
of these.
in for act of God kind of things.
But I don't even know if FIFA even bows to an act of God anymore when it comes to what they demand for a World Cup. There's a list of things, and you got to be willing to do it. I'm not saying that the Titans. I mean, everybody was on board with this, but the new stadium to me is tough to just turn the keys over to, especially if you're on a time crunch to get it done. It's tough to guarantee it. And I think FIFA deals with guarantees. I don't know if you guys agree with that. They want
guarantees. They want highest bidder also. But yes, they're going to get whatever they want for these type of events.
I think the money's probably the same for everything. I don't think it's varying city to city. I think you're.
Well, if
you're
it's
in
not,
or you're out.
if the money's the same,
you mean once the bribes happen just to host in a region or country?
Yeah.
Then the money for the cities are the same?
Oh, if the money's the same, how is Kansas City being selected here over Nashville? If the money's the same.
Well, they need to spread it out regionally.
Well, I don't know.
So
that
they're going to Seattle and Vancouver, and they want to spread it out regionally?
Here's a question I have. How is Atlanta a central region?
Well, it's North America, right? They're viewing this from the North American map.
Down to North America. I don't know. I don't know how important the region stuff is outside of how they're unveiling it.
It's west. They went west, central,
no, but
east.
I don't know in the play of the tournament how important the region is.
I'm saying I would say Atlanta would be east in that.
I would think so too, but I don't
mean,
know that
look,
it matters.
Nashville's
ultimately.
out. I think that's easy to say right now based on Atlanta being
does not
central.
Look good.
Nashville's not going to be east, considering Nashville is west
of Atlanta.
But people don't really pay attention to geography anymore either, like I do. So they may not care. They may, even though Nashville's further west, put them east.
Does not look good.
But they don't view this like the NHL, where you put the Preds in the west, right?
Yeah, like you're saying, geography doesn't apply
work.
to a lot of things. But let's hope, with the last prayer, that they don't care that much about the geography.
With all due respect to Kansas City, I look at this list and I'm thinking, what a huge upset that Kansas City is one of the cities being awarded a game.
Well, Kansas City is also historically a very good soccer city.
Still. St. Louis is a great soccer city. I mean, there's a ton.
St. Louis doesn't have a functional
Chicago, you mentioned, is a great soccer
city.
city.
St. Louis doesn't have a functional stadium.
But there has to be some logistical reason, more so than just, it's region and it's historically a good soccer city. Like, where did they play recently? Where they had in Ohio? Where they had
Cincinnati or Columbus. Cincinnati, I think.
I mean, that was people show up for that. I don't know. I just it's the first time in a while that Nashville will be told no, and to me there has to be a good explanation for this because they spent a lot of time and resources into landing it.
What they're going to miss here too is kind of the Great Lakes. There's not going to be a Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Rust Belt. Detroit, that whole area. They just put up a map of what's done so far, and I'm thinking that's going to be a big blank. Philadelphia is the closest to any of that, which isn't close.
It surprised me that Chicago, you said, was out so early, honestly, for that reason. That would have made a lot of sense.
Chicago, is the third biggest city in America. Makes a lot of sense.
It was a big deal to be a part of the 14, whenever that was announced,
right.
What, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And so was it 14 or 17? If you lose out on that, you spend a lot of time, manpower, money in recruiting these FIFA execs that have been in here and watching certain things. I mean, they were making sure other events at the stadium went well because FIFA was there observing. That's how much it meant to them.
And we're talking about Toronto is now in, which is I don't think a surprise. We're saying. What's the last big thing they've been turned down for? This is going to be the last big thing they're turned down for.
Right.
But it's the biggest thing. That's the big disappointment. Like, this isn't coming around again anytime soon. It's been since '94. It'll be that long again. We'll get it then.
Yeah, they'll be trying to get a new dome from the new dome then.
Yeah.
Well, the only things Nashville's turned down for now are things that they're not going to get. Because they're in huge dome football stadiums, Final Four, things are not in the running for.
But they're not even trying to get them. Though.
That's my point. Yeah, the only things they're not getting, anything that they're capable of getting, they've got in recent years. So it's just things they're not even pitching.
Well, Miami.
I really hope they just throw us a curveball and they say, like, Denver in the East. Something totally crazy that we
I
can
might
talk
have missed
about.
one there between Toronto and Boston. Toronto, Boston, Philadelphia, Miami. And I've lost track of how many.
Well,
it
is official. Nashville will not be one of the host cities. There you go.
Here we go. It's Toronto, Boston, Philly, Miami, New York/New Jersey. Those are your East host cities.
Now I'd like to go to the, just from the business standpoint, I'd like to know what the cities who were not selected, what they spent in trying to land this because of what they knew it would mean to land it. Because Chad, Paul, locally there is a ton of effort put behind this.
I mean, this is a huge kick in the crotch to anyone who had anything to do with this. That's a lot of people who worked hard to land this thing. So the official breakdown by country, North America, 3 in Mexico, 2 in Canada, 11 in the United States.
And that's an upset because it's supposed to be 10 for the U.S. So two things to note. That 11th city probably, I don't know. I hadn't heard much about Seattle. It's a little bit of an upset that Baltimore, Washington doesn't get it and those would have been played in Baltimore. But typically the capital is a host. Typically, and this wouldn't happen here, it didn't happen last time, the capital hosts the final. But the final will likely be Los Angeles.
And again,
or New York.
I also want to point out, if it's about like atmosphere and what to do around the stadium, they're saying Boston. This is in Foxborough.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 2-destination thing now. In a place like this, there's a party in Foxborough for the games, and there's a party in Boston for not. It's 2 destinations as opposed to one.
And I realize like it's different regions here, but FIFA is literally going to a stadium in the middle of a subdivision. Like right behind where the World Cup will be played.
There's a Bass Pro Shop.
Someone's got a basketball goal attached to their garage. Like,
you know how much they're getting for parking, huh?
Yeah, it's just if you want to throw
5
all
times
these excuses,
the biggest thing they've ever got for a Patriots.
And we're going to hear a litany of them.
What if FIFA
from the Danish?
What if FIFA just didn't know? They're like, oh, it's not in Boston. What? It's in where? Foxborough? I just assumed Boston. When you made your pitch from Boston, I thought it was there.
I'd love to know the story behind the story with it. So
we'll never get it.
Again, if it's all about travel, you're flying into Providence, Rhode Island. That's a faster route to get to Foxborough. And
we would know. We've done it multiple times.
Yeah, it's all strange because it was a year and a half ago. It was the World Cup was coming to Nashville in some contingency. Chad, hit us up with the U.S. Open leaderboard if you don't mind.
We'll do that now or when we come back?
Hit it now because we've got it on the screen.
All right, let's do it. U.S. Open leaderboard as I refresh my screen. We've got a Canadian now in the lead. Hadwin is at 4 under par. Taryn at 3 under par. I think he's central. I want to say Paul was surprised that it's not being played in the American capital. I, for one, was shocked that there was not going to be Ottawa as a host city, as the Canadian capital. But that's not happening either. Callum Taryn is at 3 under. Adam Hadwin, by the way, alone at 4 under par through 11 holes in first. Rory McIlroy done for the day at 3 under par. And that is your leaderboard for now.
Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. We'll keep you updated on the Thursday edition on the U.S. Open leaderboard. Continue to discuss Nashville not being one of the host cities for the World Cup. All of that and more. Plus the very latest detail with Brittney Griner and the detention in Russia, which just continues to get kicked down the road here. Bizarre story. That's next on OutKick 360. So I was curious with the story that I came across Twitter last night for me. I know it's been out there. OutKick 360 rolls on. Brittney Griner is on day 116 of being detained, and the earliest they are going to hear a pretrial detention hearing in Russia is July 2nd. But yet, I was curious because I haven't seen much on this story since we first heard about it, and I know she has contact. She's given some access to relatives or what have you, but it's not much. It is a crazy story.
We have failed her. American sports media,
Yeah.
American media, us as a show, me as
As
an
a
individual,
country,
we should be talking about it every day.
It
Yes.
is very strange.
And if it was a different profile person, we would be talking about it every day. She deserves better.
I agree, and it's just strange to me that even someone of her profile, which is not elite sports celebrity
But
profile,
significant.
hasn't been pushed enough by American authorities, by everyone that it's been done by now. I just look up and I think she's still in a detaining center.
Our attention
in
span
Russia?
doesn't
Well,
allow
she
for it.
She could face 10 years in prison for hemp or oil or whatever.
It's ridiculous.
It's crazy. And this has been since March. So I'm going to, every time I see it, I'm going to try to get an update on it. But the earliest we will have anything will be July 2nd, if in fact they actually hold the pretrial hearing then.
An observation on this World Cup selection, pointed out by Matt Smith, who follows us pretty well. Not only does Nashville lose out, Denver loses out, Cincinnati, which was a long shot, loses out, Baltimore loses out, which was a joint bid with Washington, but the games would have been played at M&T Bank Stadium. What's the commonality there? Those are all the downtown
AFC
stadiums.
teams?
Well, yeah, those are all the downtown stadiums. I tweeted Seattle is the best venue to me now because it's the one where you could walk from the stadium into the city. All of these other ones, what's the next best? Kansas City, middle of nowhere. Houston in the business district.
San Francisco's
Dallas,
in Santa
nowhere.
Clara.
San Francisco is nowhere near San Francisco. New England is nowhere near Boston like we're talking about. New York is nowhere near New York.
So it's about total control.
Well,
They want to control
and it's
all
also,
property around
It's
it.
also two venues. So you're at the stadium and you're in the city. You've got, the whole geography of the thing. They didn't choose these places where you're walking out of the stadium and spilling into the streets and the hotel and it's all one united thing, which is a more European feel to me. You walk out of Wembley, Hutton, you were there. You're in a part of London outside of Wembley.
Cincinnati,
you are not in most of these places.
There's a report from a channel, a television station, WKRC in Cincinnati, that the local government there approved $10 million in order to spend on making a bid to host the World Cup.
Yeah, and outside of those bids, I think another finance question is like, how much would you spend on updating your stadium for them? SoFi doesn't need to do hardly anything, right? But Paul Brown Stadium, which is getting upgrades, certainly would need to do some stuff. And like I said, Nissan Stadium was going to knock out the corners and would have been, one of the Gillette Stadium's probably going to do some stuff to make itself fit for World Cup games.
I'm way too American football focused when my first response is, those are all AFC cities that you rolled through.
I'm going somewhere, and I hope I'm going where the U.S. is going to be for at least a couple.
Nice. Do you have a preference where that place may be based on that announcement?
Well, I'd prefer it not be Kansas City, or I'd prefer it not be Houston because I go to Houston all the time.
I think it's going to be an East Coast city.
I
think they probably play two on the East Coast and one somewhere else, which is generally how it goes.
I was
One
really
will be
looking
New
forward
York,
to
New Jersey.
to seeing what Nashville could do in regards to hosting this.
No, me too.
The stadium situation certainly hurt.
But look, I see a lot
I'm not blaming anybody. It's just bad
it's
timing.
just what happened.
I see a lot of angst with Atlanta, with Nashville people going against Atlanta.
Coke has huge power, and that stadium is magnificent.
Well, it's
beautiful.
It's also a much bigger city and a better. I mean, it makes sense.
Sucky city. I agree, but it's much bigger.
Take the bias out; it makes sense.
Foxborough,
fan
on the other
talking.
hand,
Yeah.
you point to Boston, but
Kansas City, give me
have
a
fun
break.
in Providence, FIFA.
Right. Have fun in Kansas.
Back
Just
at
a
it
little bit west of Kansas
tomorrow
City.
for
It's in
Outkick
Missouri.
360 across the
Not just a little bit
Outkick
west.
network.
Don't block the box. Do lock the locks. Free Brittney Griner.